Welcome back. We have developing news out of Melbourne. Demonstrations have turned violent as anti-war protesters call for a stop to a military weapons expo taking place in the city today. We have reporters inside and outside the Melbourne Convention Centre, but first outside to Georgie Dickinson. Georgie, this has been flaring up from time to time over hours this morning in the middle of peak hour. What is the situation on the ground like now?
Yeah, good morning, Laura. It certainly has been. It started around 6 o'clock this morning here where we're standing now. Protesters have done really like a huge loop, I suppose, around the outside of the convention centre, spraying their message, clashing with police. Now we've got this situation. We've got the protesters to one side and the other side, the police. We've got the riot squad at the front, followed by lines and lines of officers, and at the back we've got the police on horseback. They're slowly moving the protesters further and further away from the convention centre. Now, we've seen bullets of tear gas being sprayed into the crowd. Journalists have been copped with splashes of water, tear gas. We've now got masks as well to protect our faces from the tear gas that is actually being sprayed into the crowd. At the moment, protesters are filling bins and lighting them on fire, pushing them towards the police. They wanted this to be a peaceful protest, but this is far from peaceful. Before we have, I'll show you a small snippet of the actual sound of these tear gas canisters being deployed. Take a listen. Extremely loud, frightening sounds. I personally have never heard a tear gas canister being exploded, but it was terrifying. It was multiple rounds, one after the other. Then the protesters all ran. The riot squad chasing after them, basically, and everyone had to move to the sides. 18 extra officers have been brought in to protect the area around where this military weapons expo is taking place. Every single time a delegate for that expo came in, they were met with boos, shouts, calling out shame to them, saying that they're killing our children, and they then had to be escorted by police to actually gain access into the Melbourne Convention Centre. At the moment, you can smell the smoke from all of those bins that have been put on fire. Now, the Victorian Police Minister spoke a little earlier on the show. Here's what he had to say.
There's nothing but disrespect being shown from some protesters who want to behave like idiots, and police will deal with you. I want to take the opportunity to thank Victoria Police members who've come from around the state and around the suburbs to keep the community safe. There's always a few people who want to show disrespect and break the law, and police will deal with them.
We've seen multiple protesters carried away. I just heard again those tear gas canisters being fired multiple times by police. There we go, again and again. They're trying to move these protesters back, but they're just not moving. There is expected to be 25,000 people in this protest. Here, there's definitely not 25,000. We've probably got hundreds of people in this area alone, but people are also at the other entrance, blocking everyone off from actually gaining entry. Now, police do also have special powers, I will mention. They are able to ask protesters to take off their masks. A lot of protesters are happy to come out and protest, but they don't want to be seen or heard on camera. But they're able to ask them to move on, ask them to leave the premises, and they're also able to ask them to search their bags. So, Laura, it is an escalating situation, no doubt. This is going to continue for hours here in the Melbourne CBD.
Georgie, thank you. Let's go inside now. Simon is there for us. It's very calm. The Americans have just launched its pavilion. You've just spoken to the acting ambassador today, inside there today. Is he baffled as to why this has attracted so much attention?
Well, yes, and this is a different Simon you're seeing on your screen now. This is Lieutenant General Simon Stewart. He's the Chief of Army, and he's getting a tour right now of the South Australian Pavilion. Now, the Lieutenant General this morning gave a speech, is my understanding, to a number of defence industry figures, where he did acknowledge earlier in the week, he acknowledged the Royal Commission into Veterans Suicide report that was released as well. Simon Stewart, I am informed by a number of sources, talked up the role of industry in defence in Australia. And we saw last hour the setup that the Army has and Department of Defence has here inside this event, which obviously does take place to the backdrop of those demonstrations that are occurring outside the Convention and Exhibition Centre. I was speaking a short time ago with the acting ambassador of the United States. She just launched a pavilion that the United States have here. And also I was speaking to the Shadow Assistant Defence Minister, Philip Thompson, the member for Herbert. He's here too. He's taken a little bit of a swipe at the federal government over not having any, well, he says, over no official representation here at Land Forces so far. Of course, it's Parliament sitting week in Canberra.
And really, we should have the Minister for Defence and Defence Industry here. They should have got
here.
No, they're not. They need to be here.
It's a sitting week.
Yeah, this is our people, right? Their job is to keep our people safe, make sure we have the equipment to do that. They're in government. They should be at Defence Industry. They should be at Land Forces.
So the exhibition, it starts today. It goes for 3 days. Tomorrow, the Chief of Army is giving the Chief of Army symposium where he'll give a major speech talking about the state of play for Army and Defence Forces at the moment. You can see Simon Stewart there, the Lieutenant General. He's off to his next stop here at Land Forces. In fact, he's going inside the South Australian Pavilion. So you can see the South Australians, Laura, as we know, they've got a major defence presence in Australia, and they are here at this conference alongside many of the other states and territories as well.
Simon, thank you. I just want to take you back outside. Things have been set on fire now. So, you know, every now and then it seems like police are getting the upper hand, but then that changes very quickly indeed. We see a number of members of the riot squad at the ready, man there with the Palestinian flag. So you get the flavour of these protests. They are anti-war protests. It is outside a weapons conference in Melbourne there. There was another man that we saw on screen in live pictures just a short time ago that he... More tear gas being fired at protesters there, as you can see it. And also there is medical assistance on scene as well. We saw a number of people being treated for the effects of tear gas, but these protests are not going anywhere. They started early this morning and they look like they are going to last well into today. Police have a reasonable hold on the situation, but as you can see there, they're still needing to fire tear gas, and this is going to last for quite some time.